You're on Strat News Global, and this is a special program in a series on China, its economy, and the US-China rivalry that may pan out this year in its higher intensity than ever before. And with me is a familiar face on Strat News Global, Jayadeva Ranade, known China specialist, commentator, analyst, and someone who watches China very closely, more than even what happens in India. So welcome to this program, and my first, obviously the first question is that Donald Trump in the first week itself has given indications that he's going to be chaotic, he's going to be thinking out of the box. But would he apply the same template to China, which he thinks is a rival that he must rein in? What's your assessment?
Well, thank you firstly, Nitin, for having me here and for raising such a important and crucial question, especially with a disruptive US president like Trump. I'd just preface my response with one comment, which I think is that Trump has, in these last few years of being out of power, I think he's thought things through. And even with the cabinet whom he is bringing in, he has obviously had discussions with them as to what to do. And I say that on two counts. One, Trump has made contradictory statements as soon as he came in. On the one hand, he talks about, he has referred to China as a competitor, as a rival, and threatened sanctions of various kinds, not sanctions, tariffs of various kinds.
Yeah. Tomorrow, the February 1st deadline that President Trump put into place at a statement several weeks ago continues. The president will be implementing tomorrow a 25% tariffs on Mexico, 25% tariffs on Canada, and a 10% tariff on China for the illegal fentanyl that they have sourced and allowed to distribute into our country, which has killed tens of millions of Americans. These are promises made and promises kept by the president.
On the other hand, he calls Xi Jinping a friend and China a big country. But if you look slightly lower, Rubio, the Secretary of State, the first meeting that he had as Secretary of State after the inauguration was with the Quad.
That's right. All the Quad foreign ministers were there.
All the Quad, and it was planned.
Yes.
And where they spoke about aggressive actions in the South China Sea. So the message is very clear.
Sure.
And then Hegseth, who has just been appointed or confirmed as Defense Secretary, he sent a message to the force, where again the only country that he mentioned is Communist China, and he said we have to gear up to prepare against them. The others, the NSA, Mike Waltz, is similarly very negative on China and very critical of China. So you've got this team of people, at least 5 prospective and present current cabinet ministers in Trump's cabinet, who are hard on China, who are going to go for China. Secondly, I think the Republicans and the Democrats themselves are also have a very negative view on China, and
so it's a bipartisan negative.
It's a bipartisan. The only people who may try and sort of modulate or moderate Trump's actions and views would be the big business in the United States, who are committed to making money out of China.
And invested in China.
But Trump has just come out with a statement that I read this morning, where he says that I'm going to slam them with a lot of tariffs if they don't come home and manufacture here. He was talking in context of Taiwan and the chips.
Right.
So there is a contradiction there. But having said that, I think it is today, if you look, unless of course Trump strikes some kind of a deal, I think it is they're on a course where the competition is going to escalate, where I think Trump and Xi Jinping are going to collect their friends or allies or partners
in
together
in
their own corners. So I think the other countries will have to now, they're reaching a stage where they'll have to make a choice.
Right.
So I think the world will be divided. We'll go back into that kind of system. And I wouldn't put it past the Americans and the Chinese that they would have a clash somewhere, instigated by someone.
It's ironical that Richard Nixon and Henry Kissinger did an outreach to China in 1972 just to bring China into the normal fold in the global arena. And now after so many years, 53 years, we are seeing that the Americans are probably regretting what they did. But that's past. Looking into the future, before I sort of come to India and China and what India must do, I also want to ask you about the internal economic situation in China. We've heard various reports about how it's in a bad shape at the moment, or it's going to create problems for Xi Jinping. But if you go by what's happened in the last 2 days, or say last 2 months, let's say, first they announced the first flight of the 6th generation fighter aircraft. Now they've got this deepseek, a very inexpensive AI tool or AI program, which has spooked the US technology companies, and the stock market has really crashed in US. Nvidia has lost so much. So what is the correct assessment on China? Because since you watch China so closely, is it all hype, or is it that he's trying to project an image which gives confidence to his own people and also puts a scare in the minds of the Americans? Where are we there on that?
If you don't mind, Nitin, I'll just take a moment. I think we should look at the weeds, if I may say,
Sure,
of the entire thing.
Of course.
And 2-3 facts I'd like to put
please.
out here.
Yeah.
First, more than half of China's provinces have missed their self-set GDP growth targets.
Okay.
So that indicates an overall decline in thing, including so-called prosperous province like Hainan Island. So that's one.
Okay.
The second is that at least 100 protests have been recorded across China, and some of them have escalated. Third, the economic situation is obviously bad enough for people to come out and, I would say indirectly or implicitly, criticize Xi Jinping's policies, which is a dangerous thing to do in China. But just a couple of days ago, I saw a very lengthy article in the People's Daily under a pseudonym used by the Central Economic Affairs Commission, which talked about how very little has been done for private entrepreneurs who are really the engines of growth.
Okay.
Now that's something that goes against Xi Jinping's line, because he's pushing for state-owned enterprises. There have been other articles which are talking about the Economic Work Conference having been delayed and things like this. So I think there is a lot of discontent, made worse probably by Xi Jinping targeting the bankers and the financial regulators, many of whom have landed up in prison. So I think the economic situation is bad. Having said that, matters are compounded by the United States and Europe cutting down on imports from China.
And also raising tariffs.
So now this so-called, even if it is just 10%, it's a scary prospect for them. And the People's Daily, which is the mouthpiece of the party, has just come out with an article saying that, Trump has announced all these tariffs, but 16% and deportations, 16% of those working in the food supply sector, like the department stores, etc., are undocumented. And 41% in the agricultural sector are undocumented. So that is going to cause a lot of problem to the American consumer and, etc. So it talks about the collapse of the agricultural system in the United States. So they are fighting a kind of a defensive battle. They know that things are going to get worse, but they are banking on the fact that the American consumer will complain about the 10% hike or plus more than 10% that he's going to suffer. That's one thing that they're banking on. But they know that it's going to be tough. So I think things economically are tough on them. And Trump's warning to the BRICS nations that if you try and move away from the dollar, then I'm going to come for you. I think would have been a dampener to many of the countries which are looking at it from that point. India, of course, had already made a statement
there's
saying
no
we are not
currency
looking.
that we are looking at.
And I think it would be a very foolish move if we go in for a currency swap with a country which is an adversary, close to being an enemy rather.
Correct.
So, but the others were, toying with the idea, and I think the message has gone through. So that's the situation as far as
Internal economic situation is concerned.
And I think Xi Jinping is under pressure, but he's trying to hold on.
Right.
The advertising or propagandizing of the sixth generation aircraft, etc., I think a lot of it is propaganda. Now, this particular aircraft, certainly they've shown a small video, but nothing more. People are looking
Which engine, what,
yeah, exactly.
we don't know.
There are no details, neither of performance. So I think it's still a far, far away. And the Chinese have a habit of projecting what is on the drawing board as if it's already come. They were having problems, as you know, with just development of jet engines. So I think it's far distant. But what is certainly there and which is real is this deepseek.
Yes.
The only question there is whether it is really as cheap as made out.
They're saying 96% cheaper than ChatGPT.
Than ChatGPT. Now, those are the figures that they have put out,
Yes.
$6 million or something like that. But the point is, we know that the Chinese state, the government, has pumped in a lot of money into AI. Now, probably, and I'm not saying that I have evidence for it, it will come, I suppose, in a while, but probably a lot of that has gone into development of deepseek.
I'm sure.
Because there's nothing private there, it's all, state-owned companies. So I suspect that deepseek costs a lot more, but it has come at a time when the Chinese can say that we have arrived, we are at this level, and at the Davos forum just now, there was a forum on AI, where they have said that, we can collaborate with the world on AI.
And the world will veer towards them if it's cheaper.
If it's cheaper and more easily available.
More easily available, yeah. So I think the US has a lot to think about. US tech companies,
yes,
NVIDIA, OpenAI, all those companies will have a lot to think about. Although they also announced a project called Stargate, with $600 billion of initial investment between NVIDIA, Google, and I think OpenAI.
Yeah.
So,
but they're starting,
and Oracle,
they're starting now, which is after behind
the Chinese. So they actually have a lot of progress on deep tech or future technology that the Chinese have demonstrated. But also this factor on the China-US competition is also Russia. I think many people think that China-Russia together would pose a major threat to the US. How does Trump then deal with these two together?
Trump has spoken about ending the war in Ukraine.
In Ukraine, yeah.
If he succeeds, then he releases, to an extent, maybe I'm exaggerating here, but he releases Russia from being captive to China.
Which they anyway don't like.
They don't like it, but today they have no option.
Right.
And he can, in a way, throw a lifeline to Putin and say that, look, we are here. That frees him to do what I may call a reverse Nixon on China, And that is what Xi Jinping is very worried about. And the Chinese Communist Party, but primarily Xi Jinping, who, if you recall, in fact, we discussed it on your program some years ago.
Exactly 3 months ago.
That,
no, the earlier one.
That, there were people who had opposed Xi Jinping's policy of backing Putin.
Right.
So, all that will come out.
Sure.
So, I think if Trump is able to push that through, then China is going to have an even rougher time. And my hunch is, I'm not sure. I'm sure he will try it. I don't think Europe can afford to continue backing Ukraine with money without US support. And I don't see Europe putting boots on the ground in Ukraine.
That is impossible because they don't have enough people to go on the ground for themselves. So forget about Ukraine.
Exactly.
But that is something that also then plays into what India must do. And I need to take a break. I'll come back. I'm in conversation with Jayadeva Ranade on US-China competition, India-China. You could call it thaw, you could call it disengagement. On that, when I come back after this break, don't go away. Let's turn our attention to India and China. And last 4 months have been, in a way, a bit of a disengagement, a bit of a thaw, not fully maybe. But I want to put it in the context of what's happening between US and China, and then come to India and China. So my first question in that respect is, one fear that Indian decision makers have always had is that there is no guarantee that US will not do a deal or a handshake with China and leave India high and dry. And therefore, India must have its own policy towards China. How fair is that?
I think that's a reasonable supposition because why only US? Every country looks to its own interests. And the United States track record is such that it has ditched whoever it wants to go there. However, the only caveat I would add is that vis-a-vis China today, unless the United States is prepared to be the number 2 or number 3 power in the world, it really cannot strike a deal with the Chinese. I mean, it can be very temporary, but that's about it.
Right.
But I think India is quite right to keep its powder dry, to keep, have reservations about what America is going to do. And that is the policy that we have followed so far. I think quite correctly. But if I can just add here, it doesn't mean that we are not keen on having relationship with the United States. I think that also has been made clear by.
Oh yes, that I think it's gone several notches up in the past
Yes.
few years, and I think Trump is likely to take it further up, given the way he operates and the way he just had a call with Prime Minister Modi,
Yes.
where they have spoken about meeting in the White House probably in February itself. But let's, like I said, turn to India and China. Foreign Secretary Vikram Misri was in Beijing to meet Wang Yi and others, and now they have decided to resume the Mansarovar Yatra and several other confidence-building measures. How should Indians look at this? Is there a trap here? Should India be wary of the Chinese approach to wooing India at the moment, because they are in trouble in other parts of the world as far as internally? Is that something that is driving their policy right now towards India?
I would certainly say yes. I would say that I don't think we should trust China at all. I think we should be prepared for another adventure by China, and I'll just spell out why in a minute.
Okay.
But what we are seeing just now of Vikram Misri going there, the NSA going there earlier and having the meetings, I would certainly not call it a thaw. I would say it's an incremental improvement in an attempt to try and,
Manage the situation.
manage the relationship.
Okay.
Manage the relationship. There are certain things that we need from the Chinese, certain kinds of trade that we are doing, which we want to continue. The Chinese, I think, are under increasing pressure to find a new market, and their economy is not doing at all well. So for them, it's imperative that they come close to us. After, mind you, Xi Jinping having made it very clear that the relationship with India is one of an adversary at the 20th Party Congress. You will recall my having mentioned that.
Yes.
So I think that is the backdrop in which this is happening. Mansarovar, yes, they are pandering to us. There's sort of that, we are keen on Mansarovar, our pilgrims, so it's a outreach to that effect. I think they would also be thinking that there's a BJP government here, and that will also
So emotional connect
connect there and people to people. But we have also now opened up, going by the statements during Mishi's visit, about visas, journalists,
Direct flights.
direct flights, which are the 3 demands that the Chinese have been making. So I think there is some movement here.
Sure.
But I would also invite your attention to Wang Yi's statement that has been reported about mutual tension, mutual estrangement, or mutual suspicion, mutual estrangement, and mutual exhaustion.
Sure.
It's a very strange formulation.
That we should refrain from doing
Yes,
this, he's saying.
refrain.
No, for me, okay, you complete, then I'll ask you.
It's a very interesting formulation. In fact, mutual suspicion. if you just try and parse it as, in English, the language that it was there, then that means they are also equally suspicious of us, and there's no reason why the suspicion should go.
Right.
And as I said, I'll tell you in a minute
Right.
the other problem. And mutual exhaustion. That is very intriguing.
Exactly.
Now, we have been seeing that they are having trouble keeping the forces deployed there, recruiting people, etc. So, is he implying that, or I mean, it's a
What
very,
is the exhaustion about?
Yes. What
is it
the
about
exhaustion?
negotiations? I doubt it, because Chinese are.
No, I think they can carry on negotiating, but I think it's the combination of factors probably. It's troop deployment is one, of course, but I think it's also their exhaustion is the economic exhaustion that they are worried about. And I think that is what, in fact, drove them in the first place to start talking to us about, the disengagement, etc. So that's how I look at it. But one thing I will say is when I said that, there's why I don't trust and what's happening. If you look at what's happening on the border, of course, the army will tell you better, but there has been no dismantling or pulling back of, and there cannot be, I suppose, of the defenses that they have built up.
In Aksai Chin.
In Aksai Chin.
Elsewhere in Arunachal.
Even elsewhere
opposite
in,
Arunachal.
Yeah, Arunachal. Second, the troop deployments and the induction of new weaponry has been going on all along. So that indicates some kind of preparation. They, of course, built roads and airfields and all that. I find a lot of development going on around the Depsang Plains and Hotan, that area of southern Singapore.
Airfields having strengthened.
Yes. So that's one part of it. And the second is, I would say that the Dalai Lama's reincarnation issue, which is coming up, and that could be a hot point as and when the event occurs.
Sure, I think that's one of the three T's that we keep discussing about their vulnerabilities, or the suspicion that they have about India,
Yeah.
Tibet, Taiwan, and Tiananmen. So that is one question that, of course, will be answered when the time comes. But on the why, I agree with you as far as the reconciliation, or there's no common point between how India is approaching it and how China is approaching this incremental progress in the relationship. India demands mutual respect, mutual sensitivity, and mutual trust going forward. Now, they are saying there's estrangement, there is suspicion, and there is exhaustion. So where do they meet? I mean, is this only meant for these small things that they're trying to achieve? Or in the long term, the Chinese would want to keep India on its, not on its side, but at least neutral when it comes to the larger battle that they have to fight against the United States?
I think, it's a very pertinent question and fairly deep. But let me say that, to my mind, the Chinese are approaching this as purely a tactical move. It's a tactical maneuver intended to do two things. One, try and diffuse tensions at the political level between the Chinese and us.
Right.
That's one.
Okay.
The second is to try and get into our market, which they were doing earlier. Then there was a pause. Now they're trying to get back in. And here, their intention would be to get in and capture certain sectors and thereby enhance our dependence on China.
The vulnerability increases.
Yes, which makes it difficult for us to take a position against China. The Prime Minister had started, in fact, Atmanirbharta and all, mainly because of that and because of what happened at Galwan. I hope that continues, because it would be very dangerous and it would be not in our national interest if we backtrack on that. In fact, I would say that we need to accelerate, utilize this time to accelerate the pace of that.
Of self-dependence,
Yes.
rather than trying to depend on China.
On China.
One final thought on all this. 2025 seems to be an inflection year, in the sense the globe is in turmoil and we have, like you used the term, disruptive president in the White House. How should India look at its neighborhood? Because that's another challenge China poses to India, be it Sri Lanka, Bangladesh, Nepal, anywhere. Are we any better than what India was, say, in 2024 or 2023, or is going to get worse in 2025 and beyond?
Well, let us take the countries one
Sure.
by one. I
Okay.
think Pakistan, I'm not going to
No,
bother
exactly,
about. It's
because
a
we
gone
know
case.
what
We
the
know where
relationship
it is.
is. Yeah.
But Sri Lanka, I think I detect some, if I may say, balancing or improvement there. I think what we did, our response when Sri Lanka was in trouble was a good response, and it seems to have had an effect. I think we need to probably step up our engagement in some way or the other as far as Sri Lanka is concerned. Time is short, otherwise
Sure.
we would go into detail.
Yeah.
Bangladesh is worrying. I think the way Bangladesh has gone and the kind of postures that have been taken, to me, I'm not a Bangladesh expert, but to me it appears that Yunus is not in control. It's actually the students who are
Sure.
in
And
charge.
the radicals.
And the radicals. And the Jamaat in Bangladesh is even more toxic than the one in Pakistan. So I think that's what's happening. But having said that, the Chinese have already visited thrice. Liu Chanqiao, the head of the International Liaison Department, which is, you can say, the espionage and foreign service combined of the party. He's already been there thrice, made all kinds of noises and sounds. So that's worrying. And I only hope that India is taking advantage of the fact that Sheikh Hasina is here and Awami League continues to be the largest party there.
Right.
So in some form or the other, that we are able to resolve the situation in Bangladesh. I think people are watching as to what's going to happen. And we have quite a lot of penetration, as I think the Pakistani ambassador, former ambassador here just said. So that's, I would say that it's something in the process, and I hope that will happen. Nepal is another worrying point. With Oli there, I think the first mistake we made was allowing or bringing in, not allowing, but bringing in or supporting a communist leader in Nepal. And I think since then, if you see, Nepal's drift towards China has started. Oli has taken it even further. He's even signed the BRI, which Nepalese politicians were objecting
Didn't
to.
want him, correct.
So, but two things I do notice there. One is that Chinese influence seems to have come down. When I visited there late last year, toward the end of last year, definite sense I got was that the people are not happy with the Chinese. They feel they're interfering too much in Nepal's affairs, etc. They're still there, but less than what it was.
Sure.
Secondly, the Americans seem to have got in there, and they have started.
The balancing
yeah,
factor.
they have started creating their own thing. So fine, as long as they're taking on the Chinese, I guess it's all right from our point of view. But I think it's important that we don't lose ground in the process, and we need to step up there. So to that extent, the worry there is slightly less. Maldives, again, I think we seem to have
Stabilized?
sort of stabilized to some extent. So it's not looking very pessimistic, but it's not looking optimistic either. I think
So
there's
one
a lot
has
of
to be
effort.
on a watch, constant watch.
And
on
I
this.
think we have to look out also finally at Bhutan. I think that's something that's,
that's of
simmering, and with the Chinese already building up on the borders of Bhutan. I think we probably just, I mean, as I said, one has to think this through. But I think in the first instance, we have to loosen our purse strings more to these countries. We have to examine what kind of focused initiatives we need in these countries. And I think finally, where necessary, we also have to show a bit of a tough side where necessary.
Sure. I think on that note, we need to look at China much more closely as usual. I mean, there's nothing that has changed really, except for the fact that there's some incremental progress. But it remains India's principal adversary, no doubt about it. Pakistan can have its own views on that why are you ignoring us? But that's a topic for another discussion whenever we do it. But thanks for coming in. And
Thank you.
yes, indeed, such an insightful discussion. So keep watching Strat News Global. This is a special series we are doing on China. So do watch all the 3 episodes we have done with different specialists and experts. And of course, our regular programming on Strat News Global continues. Do watch, subscribe, share, and comment. They're always welcome, your comments and your feedback. For the moment, it's goodbye.